Kremlin. I believe you've heard about the word Kremlin, or it's also written in here in Russian, the Kremlin in Izmailovo. Again, Izmailovo is the area. The word Kremlin means the fortress, the fortification. And the most famous one is the Kremlin in the city center. Oh, another wedding. Let's count how many weddings we'll get to see today. And it's one of the best places for photo shoots. We have them all around the area on the weekend. So the word Kremlin means the fortification. And even though most of tourists and actually even Russians know about the Kremlin in Moscow, because it's also the main residence of the president, but we have over dozens Kremlins around Russia. So the meaning of them was, to protect the city, fortification, but they've lost its meaning in the 18th and in the 19th centuries because, cities got bigger and bigger. So some of them were torn down, some of them turned into museums. Oh my God, we are also kind of like following the wedding, but it's a very beautiful area. I love showing all of these elements because, again, they represent traditional Russian art, traditional Russian design. I sent you a picture of the Kremlin, but it's just one of the examples. I have a tour about the Kremlin, the Moscow Kremlin, so if you want to see palaces, but Tsarist palaces in the 16th and in the 17th century. One of them was actually nearby in this area and was known as Izmailovo Palace. Here, we see also some parts of flea market. The flea market is kind of chaotic. We have in here absolutely everything. Some people just sell secondhand stuff, so there is nothing really memorable. Some can sell their treasures, but this is not, the main part. Oh, I'm going to show you. Let's go inside. I think it's the time. And the idea belongs to the director. His last name is Ushakov. In the interviews, he said that, I just had a dream about this kind of place. It's a common story, because Mendeleev, Russian scientist who created the formula for vodka, the table of chemical elements, we learn the same story. So that's the way it was. And the story is that they used the works from the 16th and the 17th century to build this Kremlin. So it was inspired. Oh, another wedding. I mean, I think it's the record. It's a record. And actually, I read in the media that these days there are more and more weddings happening because this used to be kind of like the refractory palace. Are married men less likely to go to war? No, not really. We will talk about the idea of this place. So he had a dream to get inspired by the architecture of the 16th and the 17th century. And in fact, we don't really have that many buildings that would represent this architecture. Actually, none of them in Moscow. And what is the reason for it? There are several. First of all, the buildings are wooden. They were mainly wooden, so wood is not the most practical material, which means that it would burn out. One of the biggest fires was during the war with Napoleon in 1812. Nearly 80% of Moscow was burned out. So here we go. But then another story is how trends kept changing in history. Now it's pretty clear for us with fashion. So now we will go downstairs and I'm going to show you another location. Let's just say hi to bears. We'll see many bears. Bear is the national animal of Moscow. Some people still believe that we have bears, on the streets. Well, we don't. This is a place that they use for workshop master classes. Sometimes this area is open. These days it's closed. Why? You never know. Sometimes this area where I'm at is also closed. But I'm happy that I'm able to show you these beautiful views. So trends change, and now we can clearly see it with fashion. You know how we had one trend in the 60s, then in the 70s, in the 80s, things kept changing, and our tastes keep changing depending on what is popular these days. The same thing was in architecture, and in Russia, it was very radical because when Peter the Great came into power, he wanted to make Russia more progressive, meaning to turn towards the Western Europe. And as a new city, St. Petersburg became the capital. And St. Petersburg looks a lot more European than Moscow. It's closer to Europe for this reason. And for 200 years, Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, and some other rulers of Russia were inspired by European trends and European architecture. And if you join some of my tours, you've already seen like classical architecture, Baroque, Empire or Empire style, Empire from French. It was very common. But everything that we had before in the 17th century was kind of, abandoned, forgotten, or it didn't survive. Here's another good location for us. And I'm in St. Nicholas Church. We will not go inside because it's disrespectful. I mean, it's not generally approved to film inside the cathedral, the church. So we will not go inside. It's wooden. It's kind of, it's really simple. There is not much to see, to show you. But the interesting part is bride and groom get married, they go to this church. So let me just show you again, St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas, we can see also the icon of St. Nicholas. They're going to renovate the cathedral. The architecture is not typical. Like most of the Russian cathedrals, they have domes, or in some other languages known as kupol. In Russian, it's also kupol. It's known as roof-tinted architecture. And so let's walk around this area. This is, again, the first kind of area to see what we have in here. As I said, it's an entertainment center. We also have weddings in here. I don't know how many we've seen today. I think like 4, but then there's the fifth one in front of us. So it's the place to where families come mainly on the weekend. This is a place for children. It's known as the House of Fairy Tales. We have many workshops and master classes like how to create a Russian honey bread. Oh, there is a big line. Honey bread is basically this one that we have called pryanik in Russian. Because we don't really have anything that certainly survived from these areas, this place becomes the number one to come for traditional Russian holidays or something that was during the pagan times in Russia. So there is another wedding, and the wedding palace is on the left. That's where many get married, and actually 2 of my friends also got married inside this place. It's not something that you think like through. It's just, when you have, I don't know, the death threat, you just kind of start thinking that you want to get closer with people. Yes, Abdul. A lot of people keep asking me, like, do you really have the Ministry of Joy? No. I mean, everything around this area is for entertainment. It's for fun. I don't always go inside this place, but today we'll do an exception. I'm going to show you some lovely, beautiful candles that are made in here. Thank you very much. So, Museum of Vodka. When you have so many kids and you have so many master classes, the museum covers the history of vodka in the world and the vodka in Russia. They have over 1,000 types of vodka from all types of regions, but also degustation, of course. 365, what do you think it means? As everywhere else in the world, nobody wants to be an alcoholic. We are like social drinkers, which means that if you drink, you need a company, but also a reason, a good reason to drink, or an excuse. That could be both, the word poet, which means that every day there is something. Some things are absolutely ridiculous, like, the marriage